Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? It is Tuesday, June 11th. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grannies and gators, for your daily updates on Clown World. I really don't know how to describe it in in anything less than the mocking terms that it deserves. So, welcome back. We're going to have another jam-packed show tonight. Uh, I hope you guys are enjoying the new regular format, every day, Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Central, give or take whatever part of the planet you are tuning in from. Adjust accordingly. But this consistency is by design, folks. It's by intent. Everybody. I'm sure, well, I shouldn't say everybody. I don't know this, but I'm getting immense amounts of feedback these days about interruptions and disruptions on all kinds of platforms. So we're going to be diving into that a little bit today. Even this is my dashboard that I use to bring these shows to you guys every day. There was an update from those guys stating that on June 10th, yesterday, Facebook released a new set of criteria to the eligible to go live on a Facebook plan. So um, it's interesting when you go through the three parameters that they give you as to what you need to do in order to stream on have the privilege of streaming on Facebook. Are things that I passed 4.5 years ago. Like, it's having a platform for 6 months, having 100 followers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. um, they're not the only ones to experience issues. I've been having trouble with Rumble, as have others. It's not displaying all of my shows properly. Fridays isn't really showing. I'm not sure if yesterday's is showing, but people that are not specifically subscribed and going and looking, seeking out and finding, are having interruptions. And like I said, I am not the only one. So what this boils down to is what we talked about a couple of days ago: the CRTC memo. The implementation stage of Bill C-11 has arrived, just in time for the election up here in Canada and in the US of A. Uh, while the rest of the world, about, what is it, 47% of them, is having elections this year as well. The online harms bill is on deck, Bill C-63, which will punish you for future thoughts, as well. So we've moved far beyond the theater of the absurd in Clown World. So again, this is why, folks, we are being absolutely smashed. I see, like 26, 27 viewers on Rumble, a dozen viewers on X, 3 or 4 on Instagram, which is a surprise that they're still letting me stream on Instagram. But I'm going to bring up a couple of other platforms to show you guys that are important to add into the mix. Now is more critical than ever. This is why I want to stress this, guys, at the beginning of the show, before we get into what are probably going to be going to tick you off: more crime, more collusion, more corruption. And they're making sure that it is as hard as possible to find people like myself that separate the news from the noise, and talk about the things that are critical to making life livable even. So this is I at the beginning of each show this week, I'm going to highlight a couple of the platforms where we need to retreat to. And I hate to use this term, but we have the unwilling to move, and from the platforms that are absolutely 100% communist, in Facebook, YouTube, those kinds of platforms. So we need to regroup and regather. And Liberty, LIBRTI.com, is a Canadian made, patriot made platform that basically does everything that Facebook does. And this is a Canadian made community where we want people to, plug this into your routine, your habit, your alternative. I understand keeping a Facebook account to stay connected with others until you get them moved over to a more secure place, that's not going to randomly magically disrupt, your ability to network and communicate and to get the things that you need to know. They're making it incredibly difficult. If you try and share any of my stuff on Facebook right now, you're going to get a 404, does not comply to community standards, all of that nonsense. That's what you're going to get. Another platform that replaces Wimkin, or pardon me, Facebook, is Wimkin. You guys hear me talk about this quite often. This is American made, patriot fighting, still fighting the Supreme Court and all of the big battles. You guys have met him. The guy behind this, Jason Shepard, he's a friend of the platform. He's taking on bigger battles again. So there's going to be some news coming from Jason on that front. But again, this is a platform that they will go to the mat, good, bad, or otherwise. They believe in the rule of law and the Constitution of America. And we will continue to stream there daily. So that's a good platform. There's other ones to use. Absolutely, there's different things that are out there, guys. But what I'm focusing on is where we are, or our community, myself. Like, it's hard to explain to people how much work goes into this, how much time it takes to this is pretty much a one-man operation here at What's Up Canada, and everything that we do is me doing it. So through trial and error and research and experience over the last 4 or 5 years and knowing what's coming, this is why we put so much effort into platforms like LGM.news, which incidentally people have had no interruptions on. So we've had interruptions everywhere except LGM, and of course whatsupcanada.org, which is my home base. When it comes to disseminating documents and follow-ups with everything that we do in the show here, the day after comes out on Substack, where you get all of the resources, all of the links, everything that I used to do that show, you'll find here on Substack. So Substack is one of those platforms where it's optional, it's free. Everything is free thanks to the goodness and the generosity of a few people that do donate to help us out, from time to time as they can or as they are able. They're the ones that keep it free for everybody else. So I want to send a huge shout out and a thank you to the people that do this to keep it free for everybody else, and it keeps me being able to do this. I'll tell you, I promise you, this is not a lifestyle driven. This is about how much information I can cram into one place to get to you guys every single day, and this is how I'm doing it over the next period of time. So all of the resources, all of the links that we used in yesterday's jam-packed show, as well as we get to there. I'm going to bring them up over here instead. Some of the other stuff that's coming up this week. And these are the things, again, that our community allows me to do. Tom Marazzo, if you don't know him, you need to. This is a man that is as genuine and driven as the rest of us in this movement. He doesn't do this for the infamy or the notoriety. He would, just like me, rather not have it. But he is committed to the people of this country, and he understands right from wrong, and he's got a lot of information and knowledge and calm and experience that's worth listening to, and he doesn't get nearly enough time out there. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to having for some time, but tomorrow night we get to do it. I've been brushing up on his book. I absolutely love it. Forward by Dr. Julie Panesi. So that's coming up tomorrow, and that's kind of going to be the routine here, guys, over the next period of time. That's why I'm talking about the consistency. You're probably not going to get notifications, so you have to get understand the routine and the habit of what Up Canada is going to look like. So Wednesday is going to be special guest night. So that's going to be one of the consistent things. And Thursday, we are going to have another jam-packed blockbuster show on what's going on geopolitically from 50,000 feet. The insanity is unsustainable. And when we close tonight's show off, I'm going to give you guys something to think about to come back to this show on Thursday about the global shift that they're trying to desperately to brand as far right, but the truth of the reality is the left have gone so far left that if they even kind of half glance to the right, it's far right to them. So we're seeing a correction. The insanity is unsustainable, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that and the cause and the effects of what's going to happen with that. So, and then Friday, we will get back to Bankers, Bandits, Bullion, and Bucks with Bryce, where we dissect the conspiracy theories from reality and give people what they need to know and understand in, making decisions in the financial sector. So, after all of that, where are we now? Okay, we've covered Substack, we've covered Wimkin, we've covered Liberty. Yesterday's article, guys, was probably a bit of a shocker to a lot of people. But we're going to get into what's going to probably be somewhat shocking, at least for a lot more people. You're going to hear some usual bandits again, and some of what some of the stuff they're probably trying to skate under the radar, and we're yeah, I hope you've got a calming beverage, and let's get into it. So even the Atlantic has now acknowledged the extremist attack on free speech, and they're talking about a bill making its way through the Canadian Parliament, which would impose draconian criminal penalties on hate speech and curtail people's liberty in order to stop crimes they haven't yet committed. So have a bad thought, and you could be guilty and considered guilty before you even said it or did anything about it and deemed to house arrest. This is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. This is what the online harms bill is attempting to do. And you know we talked about C11, C18, all of these gradual step forwards to complete silencing of people. Now we're at the part that literally keeps me up at night. We're not just going to have Julian Assange locked up in a gulag for sharing truth with people. It's going to be all of us, to some varying degree or other. And at this point in my career, there is not a snowball's hope in Hades that I am not going to be among the first to be removed entirely, and also all evidence thereof is going to be removed. So the Atlantic is talking about the exact, the implementation of what we're going through. So don't write off or dismiss the disruptions in the technology, the delivery of it. These are things that are important to recognize, and it's time to get regrouped. Like I said, on some of the other platforms, Getter is good as well. It's one I haven't really had. I mean, I could build 1,000, profiles on 500 different platforms, but it's just not enough for me to go around on that. So this is to be expected going into the election year. We have got the Liberal Party flailing around miserably. Trudeau running. In Freeland running from questions at every turn. They can no longer show their faces in public anywhere that they go, but they still manage to get out there and deliver a bunch of money. And this is something that probably won't get noticed in the mercenary media, but bears incredible scrutiny, because those of us that have been understanding and digging and diving into the COVID measures and responses and plans, and harms and all of these things, understanding that we were basically, how did Dr. Hodgkinson just describe it? The most unsuspecting and innocent society in the history of the world are being turned in, being genocided by this program. Well, one of the companies that is a typical recipient of our federal government funding of contracts in all different measures, ways and forms, is growing its disease business. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, just announced this past week, Deloitte is growing its disease business, has acquired the assets, including software, engineers, developers, epidemiologists. I wonder who those might be. I'm not going to forget about this, and I hope others don't either. Of a disease surveillance business called Case Pointer. If you try to visit casepointer.com today, you are automatically redirected to Deloitte's announcement. Given this age of bioweapon warfare that we've been talking about here since we interviewed the late Rich Higgins, when he talked about unrestricted warfare, telling us that they were going to be waging biological warfare. And we listen to and we start to understand what the WHO is up to with their treaty negotiations, which we're going to get an update in a few minutes on. But knowing that the fight isn't really about sovereignty, it's about who gets bioweapons programs and gets the poison and the antidote, and who's going to profit from it in the biopharma economy, the transhuman economy that these I'm not this global cabal. I'm not going to use the word elite because there's nothing elite about them. They are slithering critters that have a lot of money, and that's how they continue to wash, rinse, repeat this cycle of devastation and profiteering on society. But now, understanding, if you dare to consider the thought of our societies and being the victims of bioweapons programs and assaults manifested by government entities, like Mr. Fauci and his uh, gain of function research and the involvement of some of our corporate and political elite here in Canada, be it from testing to biolabs to programs to cover ups, connections to Wuhan to our chief medical actor, all of these things continuing to point down the road. And here we have Deloitte, one of the establishment favorites for being a recipient of the military industrial complex of Pharmacia. We have Deloitte, something like $750 million or something that they've put into this year. So so here's their press release. Basically, Endpoint's team is one of the premier implementers of Epitrax, an open source platform for collecting, organizing, and maintaining epidemiological data. Together with Deloitte's GovConnect digital assets, they will help enable public health agencies to better identify, investigate, and mitigate communicable diseases, environmental hazards, and bioterrorism events, whether they make them or not, while fortifying their emergency response efforts. Is this sending chills down your spine yet, folks? This is going to be critical information given what the next flag of assault is going to be from these psychopathic maniacs that are hell bent on destroying our society for their cult of whatever the heck you want to call it. So this is a big news announcement. Expect to hear more announcements towards the vaccine manufacturing and that kind of stuff, and government grants into that. And I'm going to be digging deeper into tracking and following more of the money and the individuals behind that particular story. But tonight we're just going to be kind of, skipping across a whole bunch of them, different connecting dots into what's going on from 50,000 feet. So, for after that one, we're going to take a look over at the Quantum Insider, where they're telling us that Moderna, IBM quantum researchers use quantum computers for critical step in RNA-based therapeutic design. Um, hmm. This is good to know that Moderna, which happens to be on a whole bunch of the investment retirement portfolios for a whole bunch of unions and likely political officials as well, would be interested in this kind of impactful research and development, and this could probably be a big reason why. Moderna is a co-op company between, it's a public-private partnership, is what it is. Let's be clear about that, between the U.S. government and Moderna, the corporation, and all of the lily pads that connect together in a swamp to make it dry. But here we have an article from the Change Oracle where they're describing this past February, about AI's impacts on the sustainable development goals. And this should be where, and I meant to pull this up, I believe it was last week. Prime Minister Sparkle Socks announced $1.5 billion for research development in AI to make Canada a leading edge on research development in Canada and be on the cutting edge of um, the this. Oh, here we go. Just a sec. I can pull that up. I was m I was mistaken. Sorry, folks. 2.4 billion for AI related investments. Hmm, pretty phenomenal amount of money for public-private partnerships into this kind of research and development when it's going towards a two-pronged chimera of uh, bioweapons development and cure, and under the likes of a government like Trudeau. That should be really, really comforting to folks. Not me personally, but when you look, this is something that it's in their agenda, and uh, this I wasn't going to give up any of my data on this, but this is from nature.com. And again, all of this will be in the Substack, guys, all of the links. For those that want to dig deeper and dive, that's the point of this. There's a lot of information that you likely wouldn't find under specific themes and topics of research, so people will be able to dive more. And by all means, share back your findings with us here. But um, what they're saying is that the development of the AI in helping the sustainable development goals, which helps 134, helps speed up and enable the accomplishment of 134 or more of the sustainable development goals. So that's that's pretty extreme, which is, what was that, 85% of their objectives. Um, can be sped up, where it's overwhelmingly positive, with significant impacts. That should be disturbing to everybody, given the direction and the nature of this government's fascination with jabs and control and power. And so this connects us to James Roguski, who by far is the to me the most trustable watchdog of what's going on with the WHO, and particularly this pandemic treaty. He is absolutely a dog with a bone, and when they had their general meeting here this month, it came a lot of people misinterpreted the results of that, thinking that we had won and we had stopped this, but no, the grift goes on here. He sits down with another organization, who is this Forbidden News, and there's a lot more to this. I've got a bunch of different stuff here, guys, but basically, we've got about 15, 18 months to understand what these amendments actually truly are. In short form, it's international agreements to co-op with each individual nation within the WHO control that is signed up for this to participate in factories for building bioweapons and jabs. So just removing this from an individual area, like in one of the states, is not enough. We have to continue to organize against this particular agency as one of the premier agencies involved in facilitating the genocide of the Western world, as you will kind of understand if you were able to catch last night's show, where we connected the how the string pullers behind the United Nations and these other organizations. And again, these links that I'm sharing, guys, are things I'm sharing these with you because these are worth listening to if you have the time. That if you're limited on time, you don't have time to watch every little thing that comes your way. These are the significant ones that you might want to sit down and focus on. And James has gathered quite a number of those, including a guide to health. So I think I got it there. Do I have the right one up? Oh, yep. Going pretty quick through some of this, but there's a couple of videos that I want to get to at the end. But again, this is about connecting you guys with the resources. There's an excellent website as an under a child initiative under the Freedom Rising banner, called Exit the Who. Um, they've been working and gathering, collaborating information, again, towards educating the significance. There is, the more you understand the connections of the new industry, the restructuring behind the slavery, the digital slavery is directly connected. Why they're so desperate to implement that is because they know that there's no snowball hope that we're going to be okay with what they're trying to implement. So there's a lot of people out there that are delivering incredibly relevant and good information, and that's what I want people to have an opportunity to get their firsthand information from. The difference between misinformation, gaslighting, the spin, the narrative is a very fine line and razor's edge right now, folks. And we need to be more articulated and specific in our approaches to take advantage of the opportunity, the Overton window being in the correct time to quote, to use the analogy of take our shot in response. These are the times where we're seeing the convergence of collusion and crime and corruption with this kind of diabolical stuff. Now is the time where we have to be ahead of this. This is from Dr. Paul Alexander, and he, he was one of the he was the second interview I did of the Doctor Talk series in 2021. The evidence that he delivered then and every day since has been astounding. If you want to follow one impassionate, desperate genius the worst nightmare of the corrupt establishment. Um, Dr. Paul Alexander is your go-to for that. So, again, I'll this link will be in the Substack coming out tomorrow, which you will find the link to in the bottom of the description on most of the platforms that we're on. But you'll find us there at substack.com/what's-up-Canada, I believe, is whatever it is. But now all of this matters. And here we're going to see Dr. Alexander's bridge into part of the problems that are manifesting on the other side of the world, and we're going to cover more of that specifically tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. But the prospect of Russia and the U.S. in a war is becoming real with Biden Inc. And maybe they will start it before the U.S. election to suspend elections. He was talking, or he's referring to the Naked Emperor, whom we've had on the show a little while back now, but I'll have to get him on again to get his take on this. But this is a distinct possibility. We'll cover this on Thursday and the different ways that President Poopy Pants down there in the United States and the meat muppets that are pulling the strings on him are walking us into a potential World War III, and it's closer than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this would be far more devastating than what that may have been. So there's, like Dr. Alexander says here, we must take the words of former Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. Russia, we got to take them serious. Russians don't bluff, and the Russian Navy is basically in Cuba, in the waters of the Caribbean, putting on a mock nuclear war training mission right now. So this is frightening. So we're going to get into a little bit more of the specifics on that, but this is, where we have to understand the distraction where he was speaking about just before this about the bird flu is also a lie, a fake fraud, a non-pandemic created by trying to use PCR again. Now the WHO, CDC, sick evil malfeasance are trying to make Mexico the new Wuhan. Do not believe them. They need another existential crisis. So this is, again, tying up right from the beginning of the show. They're silencing people like me because we are explaining to you what is coming next. This is what these guys are planning. We have, $1 billion bad guy, usual suspect in Deloitte. This is just another one getting the money that they have stolen from you to facilitate the expansion of biological warfare primarily upon their own populations, and keeping us busy with this and the shenanigans that they are leveraging to keep us under a daily mortar barrage of insanity while they implement the destruction of our nation at the behest of meat puppets that pull the strings of the places like the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and all of those complicit foreign entities that have been doing nothing but interfering in Canada and meddling in Canada with the infiltration of the young global leader. Every single young global leader, designate or graduate of that, should be in the docket for investigation or removed from any position and any benefit and any influence and any voice in the governance of our country. By sheer definition, this is treason that these guys are taking part in. So whatever level of crime, obviously I'm not a lawyer. This is just my understanding, the way I see and take it. There's at this point, if they don't do everything they can for every single party person in our government and establish who it was that put them in the seats that they are in, we need to not look at just the criminals in that have been elected. We need to establish every single entity like the World Economic Forum, United Nations, the WHO, all that do the purchasing of the politicians. Um, I'm going to play just a minute or two of this video. I've got a couple of videos kind of lined up for the tail end of this show, guys. I encourage everybody to go and watch more of them. But here we've got Judge Napolitano, and he's having a discussion with an independent journalist named oh, you'll see in just a second, but he asks her a very relevant question because she created a post, and this is something that I've been trying to describe, and I think it's something that we also need to have a deeper discussion ongoing in the public square as to who it is that's actually in power.
Get that correctly? And if so, would you explain, please? You know how much I think of your intellect and your courage. This one I'm dying to hear.
So this is a tricky one to unpack because there are a couple ways you could interpret it. There's just the obvious way, which is, well, after World War II, it's well known through Operation Paperclip that Nazis were rehabilitated and absorbed in the U.S. government, namely to establish NASA. And I think that's a chapter in history that we should revisit because I don't totally understand it myself, and I don't think there's been a lot of discussion as to why that happened. But that's not really the case that I was making. What I was thinking when I put that tweet out there is that I was watching the D-Day celebration, watching Biden turning around away from the cameras next to Macron, a lifetime banker, and that.
For me, the instant I heard Trudeau was going to be there and Zelensky was going to be there, I couldn't help but question to myself who they were there to actually represent, the Nazis that they actually serve under their political theater and applaud in Canadian Parliament, and Zelensky employs. That was my first thought when I heard they were there. In their heart of hearts, who were they were representing? And it was just my intuition gave me the most disgusting, skin crawling response you could imagine. But that was my thought.
That's basically the only mark on his resume that got him into the French presidency. And looking at these two celebrating the defeat of fascism and kind of scratching my head because it's 2024 and it feels to me as if fascism is alive and well. And because Nazi Germany was defeated in World War II, that term Nazi kind of became the label that we use for anything that is fascist. But in reality, the fascist ideology that we are taught, the Nazis was the heart of the Nazi party. Is today I see it playing out in Israel, where there is a government that has declared that its ethno-religious ideology gives it the right to eradicate an entire population of people, other human beings living in Gaza. So I see a direct line between Zionist ideology and what we are told about Nazi ideology. Not to mention the fact that on the other side of this war in Europe, we have actual Nazi brigades fighting in the Ukrainian military alongside conscripted Ukrainian soldiers that are forced to fight, dragged into buses and into vans and forced to fight a Russian menace. And the Russians were apparently our allies in World War II. So why are we now still fighting them? And you have Macron standing there before the world celebrating the end of fascism, while just weeks ago he was saying he's willing to commit French troops to go die in this war against Russia. How many Ukrainian civilians, Ukrainian conscripted soldiers, how many Russian soldiers have died in this war? How many Palestinians have died over the past 8 months? at what point do we step back and say that the same forces that we allegedly defeated, or this evil that we defeated during World War II, is still staring us straight in the face? Not to mention the fact that since the end of World War II, when this new international order, whether it's the financial order in the IMF and the World Bank, or the political order established through the United Nations, that actually resulted in a very violent decades of war. Immediately in Korea, there was a US campaign to force Korea into this world order, this financial world order, that resulted in the deaths of 20% of the Korean population, the destruction of their entire infrastructure. I've been to Korea and spoken with people still reeling from the effects of that war in the 50s. That came right after the so-called defeat of fascism. What about Cambodia? What about Vietnam? It seems that there was actually a fascist march to continue to push people around the world to participate in a global financial economy based in Europe and the United States by any means necessary, mostly through death. That's the world that we've lived in since World War II. So I just feel like in 2024, I was kind of over this celebration of the defeat of fascism, because if that was the defeat of fascism, then I'm not sure what we ended up with is honestly that much better.
And so I encourage everybody to go and catch the tail end of that, because in a lot of that I agree with this young lady, and this is what when you understand what fascism is and you see it reinventing itself here, although in that time of World War II, they had a particular label for a particular class of people, but a lot of this is exactly what we're seeing expanded to scale, as I have described ad nauseum about the World Economic Forum's plan, was basically the implementation of the Fourth Reich as a economic conquest of the world. So the United Nations took that new world rules based order to heart, and have been slowly forcing that in places all over the world for decades and decades, and destroying places and societies and countries, and this ever hungry military industrial complex that's leveled up from bullets and bombs to data and information, and all of the the psychological opportunities of this new technological evolution and time that we're living in has been all adjusted to scale towards the same goals that these guys have had for generations. This is a multi-generational uh, attempt. You look at the Soroses of the world and the Schwabs of the world, the Gateses, all of them are descendants of this hundreds of years old plan, that are just wash, rinse, repeat, whatever is their flavor of the day to justify their actions and their conquests and the continuous control mechanisms that they continue to implement. And this is ultimately, whether you agree or not, and this is what makes all of this such a travesty, that a lot of people died to defeat nothing. The comment that you're 100% correct, I'm afraid, and our ancestors are rolling in their graves, looking at this. I've sat down with 100-year-old veterans, and they weep. They weep. I can't even speak with them anymore because it crushes me, and I'm destroyed for days and days when I speak to them about what they see coming, if they're aware. So this is incredibly, this is where we're coming to the point where the band-aids have been ripped off everywhere. The beasts are the cabal itself for is it's we talked about this last night. Again, it's like the chicken running around with its head cut off. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of dangerous actors out there on the rest of the world, where it's basically a free for all. for every other entity, organization, dictator, tyrant, thug in the known worlds to exert their power, struggles right now. So we're seeing an entire reshaping of the planet. We're going to see borders realigned throughout this collapse of the cabal, and like, referring back to Neil Oliver again, things are going to get ugly, and this is going to be a part of that ugliness. The question is, how long are we going to allow our clown proxies here to continue to commit suicide on our nations because it benefits the string pullers behind these unelected foreign entities, because they're getting dangerously close to pissing off some people that don't joke. And this is a point made by Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. This is a great, Danny does gets a chance to talk to a lot of individuals, and this is the colonel here makes an incredible point that people need to understand. So we'll just listen to a minute or two of this, and again, you will find the link to the rest of this in the Substack tomorrow.
That he's making a point, a valid point, that he has.
They're talking about Putin's last declared final line in the sand, the last red line. Putin has stated what his what his line in the sand is, and this is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson's response to it.
Other weapons at his disposal, if you will. But since Russian doctrine in the 2013, 2014, 2015 period, which the Finns and the Swedes and the Swiss were studying, they had observers on the battlefield, as I recall. And some of them came to America, I think it was 2012 or 2013, and I happened to be in the briefing that they gave on the development of Russian doctrine. Among other things, they alerted us to the fact that taking shape, and now has taken shape, is a doctrinal statement within the Russian body of doctrine that should a country, and you know who they mean, achieve a penetration within the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which is their equivalent of NATO, Russia being the most prominent member, as we are the most prominent member of NATO, a penetration into that CSTO area because of the overwhelming advantage, and here you know it's NATO, of precision-guided munitions at that time as compared to Russia. Russia would simply blunt the point of the attack or the flanks of the attack, perhaps both, and maybe even some of the rear area with tactical nuclear weapons. People tried to scream at me and tell me that this is, when I revealed this, it wasn't classified. It was a briefing by our friends and allies. When I tried to reveal this in some places where neocons hung out, they were like, "Oh, that's crap. The Russians haven't got a doctrine of nuclear use like that. That would be first use." I said, "Yeah, well, you better hope that's the case if you're planning on invading the CSTO, because I take them at their word." Well, Putin's now saying that's the word. Putin's now saying that if you were to start this thing on a regional basis with NATO as a major partner in the now lost to Russia Ukraine conflict, it would change the power equation. And as the Russians used to say when they were the Soviet Union, it would change the correlation of forces. Therefore, I would be perfectly within my right to do whatever I want to with your invasion or your attack or your augmentation of Ukraine. Now let's back up and look at something else. He's had the right under the understood laws of war for some time to attack NATO countries. Anywhere someone is being trained in an F-16 or in a Leopard tank or in a Centurion tank or whatever, in London, in Poland, in the Baltic states, wherever this is happening, or anywhere where munitions are being produced at plants in NATO countries or any country that are being introduced into the Ukraine conflict and then fired at Russian forces or used on Russian forces, they have a right to attack that plant or that airfield or that training facility. Their perfect right to do so because it's being used against them. Now,
and that's what people really need to grasp. I am not a Putin supporter. I am not a Putin lover, but the terrifying reality of this is he is my neighbor, and this guy is about done, fed up with the shenanigans of the good hair Muppet Chihuahua in Ottawa and Captain Depends in the United States. And what happens when people get fed up enough? They just go in and spank the problem. And Russia has stated clearly from the beginning. And at the end of the day, guys, it is, I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, any of the innocents of this unnecessary war that's slaughtering a removed generation of Ukrainians. But at the end of the day, it boils down to that the blood's on our countries, as to the root causes of this and why. And there's, in Putin has been more than patient in waiting for the adults over here to stand up and take over from the clown world. And he is getting angry, and he is now angry floating around in America's swimming pool with some very, very destructive capabilities. And so there's something that I wanted to bring up after this, but bear with me for a second, guys. This one. Quote from Karl von Clausewitz, Prussian general: if one side uses force without compunction, that side will force the other to follow suit. Even the most civilized of peoples can be fired with passionate hatred of each other. The thesis must be repeated. War is an act of force, and there is no logical limit to the application of that force. So on that, I'm going to let a most wise man, Victor Davis Hanson, read a quote to you from his book, The End of Everything.
Victor, will you close our conversation by reading a passage from Victor Davis Hanson, the author of The End of Everything, reading a passage from The End of Everything?
Well, thank you, to the degree that I can read well. The fate of the Thebans, Carthaginians, Byzantines, and Aztecs remind us that what cannot possibly happen can indeed on occasion occur when war unleashes timeless human passions and escalation rather than reduction and violence becomes the role of conflict. In this regard, we should remind ourselves that we really do not know the boundaries of what may follow from the dispute in the Ukraine, or a standoff over Taiwan, or strikes on nuclear facilities in Iran. Like their predecessors, modern attackers will on occasions insist on impossible terms. They will sometimes become further enraged by prolonged and toxic resistance. The targeted will believe that doomed resistance may not be so impossible, that their defenses are underestimated while their enemies' powers are exaggerated, and that reason rules war. And so they will hope that even their own defeat cannot possibly entail the end of everything.
I hope that that message shines through here on this unreasonable belief that we think that we are indestructible here. We are not. This thinking that somebody in our currently infiltrated government will step up and be an adult in the room, and if these people actually represented our interests, we could genuinely expect that to happen. But until we clean up our own houses, I cannot reasonably expect for adults to prevail when the people that are in the positions of sway do not have our interests at heart, and their interests serve an entire myriad of other entities and organizations and corporations. And exactly, Ali's dad, which foreign controlled entity do you vote for? Exactly. This is the problem. And we need to absolutely fix our mess before Putin's going to believe anything that we that our clowns and clown world are saying to him. Yes, little brown jug, I can confirm that a Russian armada is down in Cuba preparing to do mock nuclear training programs. And I expect there will be other BRICS friendly nations that will be taking part in that as well. They won't be doing this alone because um, the better half of the other side of the world is kind of picking which side of history they want to be on, and they don't want to be on President Poopy Pants or Lord Farquaad's side of history at this point in time. So, in response to another comment there that was I saw earlier about a shift in European politics. We're going to talk about a lot of that over the next couple of days, and more specifically, the reasoning behind that. It's not exactly what they're telling people. It's more basically, it's because of this war. They do not. I'll see if I can find the quote from Georgia Maloney and the vice president there. No, they're not getting involved in a ground warfare with these guys. And now that Putin has said basically that if you make bombs and you send them to Ukraine, you are now a target. He has strategically deployed his strike capabilities around the planet to the point that everybody that has helped Zelensky in this illegitimate campaign is potentially a target. And Italy don't want no part of that. So, more to come in depth on that, I expect tomorrow with veteran and strategic planner Tom Marazzo, and more on Thursday in more detail and specifics. And that's where we'll be getting into a little bit more of the geopolitical stuff after we get Tom's opinion on tomorrow. And I'm going to pull up here now. I'm make this incredibly clear. I am not a Bill Mayer fan, but he did say something that I may be the most, the most intelligent thing that he has ever said in relation to what's going on right now. And I thought that this was worth a play and a listen. So a little bit of a humor, a little bit of mockery, an appropriate level of mockery, and a very subtle and yet not so subtle club to the head of the liberal logic out there. I am actually fairly impressed with this monologue from Bill Mayer, and I have to share it with you guys today.
Other countries, especially those beacons of progressivism like Canada, England, and Scandinavia. And I agree we should, as long as we're honest about the lessons we're learning, and as long as we're up to date on the current data, such as the unemployment rate in the US is 3.8%, and in Canada it's 6.1%. And of the 15 North American cities with the worst air pollution, 14 are in Canada. I'm not citing these stats because I have it out for Canada. I love Canada and its people and always have. But I hate zombie lies. Zombie lies. That's when things change, but what people say about them doesn't. Yes, for decades, places like Vancouver and Amsterdam and Stockholm seemed idyllic because everything was free and all the energy we needed was produced by riding a bike to your job at the windmill. Canada was where all the treasured goals of liberalism worked perfectly. It was like NPR come to life, but with poutine. Canada was the Statue of Liberty with a low-maintenance haircut and cross-country skis, A giant idealized blue state with single-payer health care, gun control, and abortion on polite demand. Canada was where every woke white college kid wearing pajama pants outdoors who'd had it up to here with America's racist patriarchy dreamt of living someday. I mean, besides Gaza. There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the US adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents. The median price of a home here is 346 grand. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's 487. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons. And because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt to GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary healthcare and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free health care. Look, I'm not saying Canada still isn't a great country. It is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right. At its worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness, like the saga of Canadian shop teacher Kayla Lemieux, whose pronouns are she, her, and those. Kayla is now back to being a guy named Kerry, but 2 years ago when they showed up to teach children, the progressive high school they taught at said that they, the school, not the person. Really, you couldn't have found another word. We were using that one. Anyway, okay. They were committed to a safe environment for gender expression. Safe for who? What about the children? What about the equipment in that shop class? You know, there was once a weirdo D-list movie producer in the 60s named Russ Meyer, who made low-budget B movies like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, always featuring women who look like this. His movies played in porn houses and were featured in Hustler and Playboy. Okay, fine. But who says, no, when it comes to huge, ridiculous tits, let's save that for the kids? And this is why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the...
And this is the lesson here, folks, in this. You know, here we've got one of the biggest Democrat liberals, leftists in showbiz in the United States of America mocking us like this for 5.55 minutes so far to set up the point that he is desperate that people on the left get. And so, yeah, here's the lesson.
Gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates because
They're not stopping in Canada. Full steam ahead.
that's Prince Andrew's job. Sorry, you two. They're very sensitive about the royal family, I'm telling you. I found out.
We'll make an exception.
All right. So too with all the other good place countries in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore.
It's swinging to the right, folks. We're going to dig into a lot more of that this week. It's for real, and it's time for us to catch up.
Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings. And one result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time.
This is part of the gaslighting. Everything, like I said, to the glance even, is going to be far right. If you're not a sycophant, 100% in alignment with them, you are far right. There's no such thing as center or middle or anything in between. You're far right, you're with them, or you're far right. And this is how they are losing it, because it's such an unrealistic phobia of delusion, mass delusion. Yeah, so every time you hear this far right say, no, we were right. We're not far right. We aren't far right, but we are right.
Which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades.
Have you seen the machete sword fights in Brampton?
Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem. It hands future elections to someone who will solve the problem and who, I promise, you're not going to like.
So yeah, that was kind of Bill Mayer's message to everybody that get ready for the shift to the right, and they themselves did it through their absurd commitment to the insane. And yeah, so the right is on the move. It's happening internationally, far faster than it is here. I got a couple last comments here, and then I will share us out of here. Yes, Canada is being betrayed by our MPs, 100%. All right, guys. That's all I have for important clips. I hope you guys found some value, some news, new news seeing here. And if anybody wants to help us keep going and developing and making a safer, better place out of LGM and What's Up Canada, this is how you can help this particular platform out. And if we are not your favorite and you help another out, whatever you're doing, help out an independent journalist somewhere. They are doing it for the right reasons if they are struggling to give it to you for free. So with that note, I love you guys all. Check in with some of our sponsors. As you can see, my screen went wonky on me. If you're looking for questions answered in the precious metals and portfolios, retirement funds, RRSPs, New World Precious Metals, click the link on the website at whatsupcanada.org. Or if you're interested in finding other ways to defund the cabal, Patriot Switch, we're going to be having a private hangout to talk about that here again one of these days, really, really soon. If people are interested, that get a hold of me some way, shape, or form, and we will line that up. So, with all of that said and done, I love you all. Stay Canadian, stay strong, my fellow hostages and patriots, wherever you are struggling and fighting back from. We got this. Sooner or later, we got this. All right. And tune in tomorrow for Tom Marazzo. This is going to be a conversation that you're really going to love. And get our Substack tomorrow with everything we talked about and way, way more today. Bye for now.